a heavy mahogany desk, a white folder stamped with red ink. The bold letters spelled out one word: eviction. Outside, the engine of a silver Porsche roared, cutting through the crisp morning air of suburban Texas. Marcus stepped out, clutching a hot latte, his tailored suit flawless. Beside him, Chloe adjusted her dark sunglasses, her Prada bag swinging casually against her silk dress. Behind them stood a county sheriff, looking at the gravel driveway with an uncomfortable stare. Marcus held up his phone, recording, his laugh sharp and loud. "Pack your bags, Evelyn," he shouted across the lawn. "Your free ride in this house is officially over." My hand trembled as I touched the cold paper. My father stood beside me on the porch, his callous thumbs tracing the wooden railing he built 30 years ago. He did not yell. He did not scream. He simply looked at the officer. That terrible morning was the end of a long, silent nightmare. A nightmare that had actually begun 4 months earlier on a rainy Tuesday night. The rain lashed against the tall oak trees surrounding our 5-acre property in suburban Houston. Inside the kitchen, the air smelled rich and bitter from dark Texas roast coffee brewing in a heavy metal pot. The house was quiet, save for the hum of the refrigerator and the gentle scraping of my pen. I sat at the oak dining table, surrounded by stacks of receipts and balance sheets. As a freelance bookkeeper, my nights were spent balancing the books for local auto repair shops and small bakeries. My eyes burned under the yellow light of the desk lamp. My oversized, faded wool sweater swallowed my frame. Through the archway, I could see my father, Harrison. At 68, the former oil rig mechanic moved slowly. His knuckles were swollen from decades of hard labor, his hair thin and silver. He sat by the window, silently wiping down an old brass compass my mother had given him before she passed away. He rarely spoke these days. His silence was not cold. It was the quiet grief of a man living in a house full of memories. The heavy front door clicked open, letting in a gust of wet wind. Marcus walked in. He did not look at me. He never looked at me first. He tossed his wet trench coat onto a chair and unbuttoned his cuffs. The sharp, synthetic scent of expensive cologne filled the small foyer, overpowering the warm smell of coffee. "Marcus," I said gently, keeping my voice steady, "did you bring the receipts for the car payment? I need to close the ledger for this month." He paused, letting out a short, nasal sigh. He pulled a gold watch from his wrist and set it on the granite counter with a loud clack. "Always the pennies, Evelyn," he said without turning around. His tone was flat, dripping with familiar condescension. "I work 40 hours a week closing real estate deals, and I come home to a bookkeeper interrogation. You sit at home all day doing math for bakery cupcakes. Leave the finances to me." The words stung, but the pain was an old, dull ache. For 3 years, Marcus had perfected the art of the silent treatment. He did not strike me with his hands. He used silence, cold stares, and casual insults to make me feel small. In his eyes, my freelance work was a pathetic hobby, and my presence in the house was an afterthought. I was the invisible wife. Before I could answer, the door chimed again. Chloe Bennett stepped into the kitchen, shaking her umbrella. She wore a fitted beige trench coat and sharp high heels that tapped loudly on the hardwood floor. Chloe was Marcus's top business partner, a high-end real estate agent who moved through the world with absolute confidence. "Good evening, Evelyn," Chloe said, her voice smooth, almost sweet. Her eyes scanned my worn sweater and my messy hair, taking in every detail with a quick, calculating glance. "It's freezing out there." "Chloe," I nodded, standing up. "I'll get a towel." "Don't bother," Marcus interrupted, stepping between us. He walked over to the counter and picked up an old, tarnished tin box. It was my mother's keepsake box. My breath caught in my throat. Marcus set the box softly on the table near my ledgers. His face changed instantly. The cold, distant husband vanished. His eyes welled with manufactured tears, his lower lip trembling slightly. He looked at me with a sudden, desperate warmth that I hadn't seen in years. "Evelyn, please," Marcus whispered, his voice cracking. "We need your help. The market collapsed this quarter. My agency is on the brink of ruin. If we can't secure a portfolio line by Friday, the bank will freeze everything. We'll lose our home. We'll lose everything." Chloe stepped forward, her face a mask of deep concern. "Evelyn, Marcus has been working himself to the bone. Your mother always wanted this property to protect your family's future. We just need to form a family limited liability company, an LLC. It's a standard legal shield. It shows managed equity to the lenders, so we can get a survival loan. You keep living here. Nothing changes." Marcus grabbed my hands. His palms were warm, but his grip was tight, almost desperate. He pointed to a thick stack of legal papers Chloe pulled from her leather briefcase. Over 50 pages of dense, single-spaced text lay before me. Bright yellow sticky tabs marked the signature lines. "Your mother built this legacy," Evelyn, Marcus pleaded, his voice thick with emotion. "Don't let us lose it. Just sign the management transfer. Save our family." Looking at the tin box, the memory of my mother's soft smile washed over me. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to save my marriage. I wanted the cold silence in our home to stop. I picked up the pen. My fingers trembled as I initiated page after page, moving from one yellow tab to the next, completely unaware of page 27 buried in the middle. Marcus snatched the papers the moment my pen lifted from the final line. His tears dried instantly. He did not say thank you. He did not hug me. He jammed the documents into Chloe's briefcase, snapped it shut, and walked out into the pouring rain without looking back. I stood alone in the dim kitchen, listening to the heavy rumble of Marcus's car engine fading down the driveway. The warm coffee on the counter had gone completely cold. 4 days passed in heavy, suffocating silence. Marcus was gone, claiming he had an urgent commercial real estate convention in Aspen. The house felt empty, but the air remained tense, weighed down by an unspoken dread. Early Saturday morning, the low rumble of a heavy engine broke the quiet. I looked through the kitchen window. The local waste management truck was moving slowly down our rural road. I saw Marcus's primary black recycling bin sitting at the edge of the asphalt. He had dragged it out to the public curb right before leaving for the airport. My mind flashed back to my basic legal training. Under Texas law, once trash is placed on a public curb, it is legally abandoned property. Anyone can access it. I waited until the waste truck turned the corner down the block. I pulled on a pair of thick rubber work gloves, walked down the gravel driveway, and lifted the heavy plastic lid. Inside, underneath empty wine bottles and grease-stained takeout boxes, sat 3 tightly tied black plastic grocery bags. I grabbed them, carried them straight into my father's workshop behind the house, and locked the wooden door behind me. The workshop smelled of old motor oil, sawdust, and rusted iron. Light filtered through the dirty glass window, illuminating floating dust motes. I spread a clean canvas drop cloth across the concrete floor. I opened the first bag. It contained junk mail and glossy car magazines. I opened the second bag. A cascade of cross-cut paper shreds poured onto the canvas like white confetti. Marcus thought a shredder could erase his paper trail. He did not account for the patience of a bookkeeper. Reconstructing shattered financial records was what I did for a living. I set up a bright LED desk lamp, grabbed a pair of fine tweezers, and pulled a roll of clear packing tape from the workbench. I sat cross-legged on the cold floor, and began sorting. I separated pieces with black ink from those with blue. I isolated tiny fragments bearing red corporate logos. Hours slipped away in complete silence, marked only by the steady tick of my father's wall clock and the faint rustle of paper. By noon, the truth lay taped together on the canvas cloth. The first document was a series of printed emails between Marcus and a private commercial hard money lender in Dallas. The subject line read, Project Sanctuary Redevelopment. They had named the demolition project after the very word I used for my childhood home. The second document was a credit report. Marcus was not facing a temporary business slump. He was drowning in massive personal debt, over $700,000 lost in offshore cryptocurrency trades, and high-stakes poker games in Aspen. Then came the final devastating piece, a copy of page 27 from the stack I had signed 4 nights ago. Bold black lettering spanned the top of the page. Quitclaim deed. It was not an LLC management transfer. It was a complete legal surrender of all ownership rights to my family's 5-acre property, transferred directly into Sutton Holdings, Marcus's private corporate entity. Buried in the attached blueprints was a site plan for a luxury retail strip mall. The proposal called for the total demolition of our 2-story house, the clearing of my mother's rose garden, and the paving of a massive concrete parking lot. The projected completion date was less than 30 days away. The room seemed to spin. The air in the workshop felt freezing cold. Tears welled in my eyes, but I forced them back. I took a deep, shaky breath, letting the smell of sawdust clear my head. I looked at my hands. They were no longer trembling. The crushing grief that had suffocated me for 3 years began to harden into a cold, unbreakable resolve. The weak, invisible wife who begged for affection was dead. I was an auditor examining a crime scene, and the evidence was undeniable. I gathered the taped documents, folded them carefully, and locked them inside the steel fireproof safe under my father's workbench. I walked out of the workshop and stood on the green lawn. The Texas sun beat down on my face, warm and bright. I looked at the sprawling oak trees, their leaves rustling in the soft breeze. This land was not just dirt and timber. It was my mother's memory. It was my father's sweat. I refused to let it be paved over for a gambler's debt. I walked back into the house and went straight to the bathroom. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. My hair was messy, my face pale, my sweater oversized and drab. I turned on the faucet and washed my face with cold water. I took a pair of shears and trimmed my split ends, pulling my hair back into a tight, professional knot. I went to my closet, pulled out a sharp, charcoal gray blazer I hadn't worn in years, and hung it on the door. Next, I opened my laptop and logged into my bank accounts. I opened a new, personal checking account at a completely independent credit union in downtown Austin, one that Marcus had no knowledge of. I transferred all my freelance bookkeeping earnings into this new account, severing our shared financial link. Finally, I laced up my running shoes. I walked out to the dirt trail that circled our 5-acre perimeter. I began to jog, feeling the rhythm of my boots striking the earth, my lungs filling with clean air. With every stride, I felt my strength returning. I was no longer waiting for Marcus to change. I was no longer playing the victim. I was taking full control of my life, my body, and my future. The game was far from over. On Tuesday evening, the heavy front door swung open. Marcus stepped inside, returning from his trip to Aspen. The cold rain was gone, replaced by the humid heat of a Texas summer. Marcus wore a fresh linen shirt, his skin tan, his demeanor arrogant. He did not ask how my father was feeling. He did not ask about my week. He walked straight into the living room, threw his designer duffel bag onto the couch, and demanded a glass of iced coffee. I walked into the kitchen, poured black coffee into a glass filled with ice, and set it on the granite counter before him. My heart beat steady and strong. I looked him dead in the eye. "Marcus," I said, keeping my tone soft and submissive, playing the part of the dutiful, naive wife. "If my father and I leave, are you truly going to use the family company to protect this land? You promised my mother's memory would be safe." Marcus picked up the glass, the ice cubes clinking loudly against the crystal. He took a slow sip, then let out a harsh, mocking laugh. His eyes narrowed with pure contempt. "Protect it?" he sneered, his voice dripping with malice. "Don't be stupid, Evelyn. That dirt is turning into hard cash. Within a month, the bulldozers will tear this ancient house down. Your useless father is going to a cheap state nursing home, and you can figure out where to live on your own." He did not know that inside the pocket of my linen pants, my smartphone was active. The screen glowed silently, recording every single word. Under Texas law, as long as one party in the conversation consents to the recording, it is 100% legal and admissible in a court of law. I had his confession on tape. The next morning, I dressed in my charcoal gray blazer, pulled my hair into a neat knot, and drove 40 minutes west to downtown Austin. The city skyline gleamed under the blazing Texas sun, a forest of glass and steel towering over the Colorado River. I parked in a private garage, walked 2 blocks down Congress Avenue, and entered a high-rise office building. The brass plaque beside the elevator on the 42nd floor read, "Jonathan Brooks, Commercial Litigation and Asset Recovery." Jonathan Brooks was a tall man in his late 50s with sharp gray eyes and a tailored navy suit. He sat behind a massive mahogany desk overlooking the Texas State Capitol building. I sat opposite him, placing a thick manila folder squarely in the center of his desk. Inside were the taped fragments from the trash, the corporate records of Sutton Holdings, and the fresh audio file from my phone. For an hour, Mr. Brooks reviewed the evidence in silence. The only sounds in the room were the hum of the air conditioner and the crisp rustle of paper. Finally, Mr. Brooks leaned back in his leather chair, steepling his fingers. A sharp, razor-thin smile spread across his face. "Mrs. Vance," he said, his voice a deep, authoritative baritone, "your husband thinks he executed a brilliant real estate heist. But he made a fatal error, one that will send him to federal prison." He pulled up a digital county database on his computer screen and turned the monitor toward me. "Look here." Mr. Brooks pointed to an entry dated October 2018. 6 years ago, right after your mother passed away, your father hired a Dallas estate firm. He transferred this entire 5-acre property into an irrevocable blind trust. He named an independent corporate trustee to manage it. My jaw tightened. I looked at the official seal on the screen. "What does that mean, Mr. Brooks?" I asked. "It means your father is merely a passive beneficiary with the legal right to reside on the land," Mr. Brooks explained, tapping the screen. "He does not own the legal title. Neither do you. Therefore, the quitclaim deed your husband tricked you into signing is legally void. You cannot give away an asset you do not legally possess." A profound sense of relief washed over me, cold and crisp as ice water. However, Mr. Brooks continued, his tone turning grim. "Marcus took that void quitclaim deed straight to a private hard money lender in Dallas. He secured a $2.5 million commercial cash loan against a ghost asset. By presenting forged, invalid documents to secure commercial funds, your husband has committed federal wire fraud and aggravated bank fraud. What is our next step?" I asked, my voice steady. "We set a trap," Mr. Brooks replied smoothly. "In 2 weeks, Marcus will attempt to execute a civil eviction using a fraudulent court order from the county clerk. Do not contest it in civil court. Do not alert him. Let him believe he has won. Let him bring the local sheriff to your doorstep. Why? Because the moment he presents a void deed to law enforcement to force you out, his criminal intent becomes absolute and undeniable, Mr. Brooks said. I will submit this dossier directly to the Federal Bureau of Investigation today. While federal agents build their indictment, you go home. Play the weak, confused wife. Let him dig his own grave. I stood up and shook Mr. Brooks's hand. I walked out of the glass skyscraper into the bright Austin sunlight. In my hand, I held a formal civil eviction summons that Marcus had quietly filed through the county clerk. I looked at the bold black lettering on the legal paper. I did not panic. I did not cry. I folded the paper, neatly slipped it into my blazer pocket, and smiled. I was no longer fleeing the storm. I was directing it. The humid Texas heat hung heavy over the 5-acre estate at 7 o'clock on a Friday morning. Thick white fog clung to the damp grass, slowly burning away under the harsh glare of the rising sun. The smell of wet earth mixed with the sharp scent of diesel exhaust. The peaceful quiet shattered as the violent roar of a silver Porsche echoed down the rural road. The luxury sports car turned sharply onto the gravel driveway, kicking up a cloud of dust. Behind it followed a white county sheriff's cruiser and two massive, yellow flatbed trucks carrying heavy demolition excavators. The Porsche screeched to a halt right on the front lawn. Marcus stepped out, his leather loafers sinking into the grass. He wore a crisp, expensive linen suit. In his right hand, he held a steaming cup of coffee. His face wore an arrogant, triumphant grin. The passenger door opened. Chloe stepped out, wearing a bright crimson silk dress and dark designer sunglasses. A brand-new leather Prada bag swung casually from her shoulder. She looked at the old two-story house with cold, mocking eyes. Marcus tapped the heel of his shoe against the asphalt, then raised his smartphone, aiming the camera lens straight at the front porch. He pressed his hand against the car horn, letting out a long, blaring screech that echoed through the quiet neighborhood. "Hurry up, Evelyn," Marcus shouted across the lawn, his voice loud and raspy. "Pack your bags, old woman. The bulldozers are here, and I'm not paying these crews by the hour to watch you cry." The heavy oak front door opened. I stepped out onto the wooden planks of the porch. I did not wear a faded sweater. I did not look pale or broken. I wore a tailored navy blue dress that fit perfectly, my hair styled in a smooth, elegant knot. My posture was straight, my head held high, my face completely serene. Beside me stood my father, Harrison, wearing his clean mechanic's uniform, his arms crossed tightly over his broad chest. His gray eyes were steady, devoid of any fear. Deputy Jenkins walked up the 3 wooden steps of the porch. He looked deeply uncomfortable, his eyes darting toward the ground. He held a thick manila folder tight against his bulletproof vest. "Mrs. Vance," Deputy Jenkins started, his voice tight and formal. "I am sorry to have to do this. I have a court-ordered notice of eviction filed by Sutton Holdings. The court mandates that you vacate the premises immediately." He extended his arm, handing me the white paper stamped with red ink. "Deputy Jenkins," I said. My voice was calm, clear, and quiet, yet it carried easily across the humid air. "Before you execute that paper, I need you to answer one question. Are you aware that this entire 5-acre property was locked securely into an irrevocable blind trust back in 2018? Deputy Jenkins froze. His hand stopped midair. Selling it, transferring it, or leveraging it is legally impossible for anyone, including myself. I continued, looking directly into his eyes. Whoever filed that eviction notice presented forged documents to a county clerk. If you enforce a fraudulent court order, you are actively participating in a major federal crime. The color drained from Deputy Jenkins's face. His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. His hand drifted away from his utility belt. He stepped back from the doorway, looking from the manila folder to the silver Porsche across the lawn. What are you talking about? Marcus yelled from the driveway, his arrogant smile faltering for a fraction of a second. Don't listen to her, officer. She's a confused, senile housewife. I hold the title. Show him the paper. I pulled my smartphone from my pocket. I tapped the glass screen once, connecting it wirelessly to a heavy-duty outdoor Bluetooth speaker resting on the porch railing among the potted ferns. I slid the volume bar to the maximum limit and pressed play. The pristine, flawlessly clear audio erupted from the speaker, booming across the quiet suburban street like a thunderclap. Protected. Marcus's recorded voice sneered from the speaker, vibrating with pure cruelty. Don't be stupid, Evelyn. That dirt is turning into hard cash. Within a month, the bulldozers will tear this ancient house down. Your useless father is going to a cheap state nursing home, and you can figure out where to live on your own. The sound echoed off the brick walls of the neighboring houses. Across the street, front doors opened. Neighbors stepped onto their lawns, their eyes wide with shock. Marcus stood paralyzed beside his Porsche. The smug grin was completely erased from his pale face. Beside him, Chloe gasped, her face draining of all color. The speaker was not done. The audio file transitioned seamlessly to a secondary recording captured in their townhouse. We just secured a $2.5 million federal loan using a ghost asset, Marcus's recorded voice boasted, followed by the crisp sound of crystal glasses clinking together. And the absolute best part is she still thinks she owns the dirt under her feet. Deputy Jenkins physically recoiled. He dropped the manila folder onto the wooden floorboards. The papers scattered across the porch like dead leaves. He reached for his shoulder microphone, his eyes locked onto Marcus. Dispatch, this is Unit 4. Deputy Jenkins spoke sharply into his radio. I need immediate backup at my location. Priority 1. Active federal fraud in progress. Marcus panicked. He slammed his coffee cup onto the roof of his car, dark liquid splashing heavily across his expensive linen suit. He jumped into the driver's seat, twisting the ignition key frantically. The massive engine roared to life. He threw the sports car into reverse, tires screeching violently against the asphalt. Before the Porsche could move 10 feet, the deep, guttural roar of heavy engines shattered the morning air. 3 massive black, unmarked SUVs screeched around the corner. They executed a synchronized, tactical blockade, forming an impenetrable wall of dark steel, boxing the silver Porsche in from all sides. The doors flew open. A dozen federal agents, in heavy tactical vests emblazoned with yellow FBI letters, spilled out onto the gravel. FBI, step out of the vehicle. Put your hands where we can see them, the lead agent roared, his voice booming with absolute authority. 2 agents ripped open the Porsche's door, grabbing Marcus by his collar. They dragged him out onto the pavement, spinning him around, and slammed him forcefully against the hot hood of his own car. A loud metallic click echoed across the lawn as heavy steel handcuffs snapped tightly around his wrists. Marcus Vance, you are under arrest for federal wire fraud, aggravated bank fraud, and conspiracy, the agent announced. Chloe let out a high-pitched, pathetic shriek as a female agent stepped up, grabbing her arms and pulling them behind her back. The shiny steel cuffs clicked shut around her wrists. Chloe's knees buckled. She collapsed onto the rough asphalt, her silk dress tearing against the gravel, her Prada bag falling into a puddle of spilled coffee. Evelyn, please. Chloe screamed, her voice cracking with wild, unrestrained terror. Tell them it's a mistake. You're his wife. Stop them. Daddy, please help us. I stood at the top of the porch steps. I did not move. I did not raise my voice. I looked down at them with an expression of cold, absolute emptiness. The invisible wife you tried to destroy died the night you signed my death warrant, I said, my voice flat, carrying the weight of a final judgment. Enjoy your new life in federal prison. I turned my back on the flashing blue lights, the shouting agents, and the pathetic, echoing sobs of the two people who had tried to bury me. I walked inside my home, grabbed the heavy brass handle, and pulled the solid oak door shut. The deadbolt clicked into place with a deep, satisfying finality. The federal trials moved with cold, mechanical speed. Marcus Vance and Chloe Bennett stood before a federal judge in downtown Austin. The evidence was overwhelming, the financial paper trail completely bulletproof. There was no room for lies, no room for clever legal tricks. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. The judge handed down the maximum consecutive sentences, 20 years in a maximum security federal penitentiary for each of them, with zero possibility of early parole. Within days, the bitter reality of their ruin took hold. The commercial lenders and banks moved with vicious efficiency to recover the stolen capital. Marcus's corporate accounts were frozen and wiped clean. The custom-ordered silver Porsche was seized from the police impound lot and auctioned off for scrap value. Their upscale, rented townhouse was cleared out by court bailiffs. Every single piece of designer clothing, every luxury watch, every limited edition Prada handbag Chloe owned was packed into cheap cardboard boxes and sold to the highest bidder at public auction. They were stripped of every outward symbol of wealth, reduced to standard-issue orange jumpsuits behind thick, gray concrete walls. Back on the 5-acre estate, the air felt lighter, cleansed of the shadows that had lingered for years. But the physical house held too many echoes of the past, too many reminders of a broken family and a calculated betrayal. I did not want to live in a museum of old grief. With the full support of my father and the legal guidance of Jonathan Brooks, I initiated the final restructuring of the property through the trust. I chose not to sell to another predatory commercial developer. Instead, I carefully vetted and selected a sustainable, eco-friendly residential development firm out of Dallas, one dedicated to preserving the ancient oak trees and the natural landscape. The sale closed cleanly for $5 million in cash. Every document was legitimate, signed in bright daylight under the watchful eye of true legal professionals. I took the proceeds from the estate sale, combined them with my independent freelance savings, and made a permanent, clean break from Texas. But before leaving, I knew I had to fulfill a deeper purpose. The cruelty of Marcus and Chloe's plan, the chilling reality of how easily people can be discarded when they are vulnerable, left a permanent mark on my soul. I used $2 million of the sale to establish a fully endowed nonprofit organization named the Eleanor Cole Foundation, in honor of my late mother. The foundation was specifically designed to provide free legal defense and emergency financial counseling to victims of domestic financial abuse, silent psychological torture, and predatory asset stripping. Every time the foundation stepped in to protect a vulnerable woman from an abusive spouse, a deep, resonant wave of peace washed over me. With the foundation established and my father's comfort secured, I officially completed my professional certification as a certified public accountant. I launched my own independent financial advisory firm, specializing in auditing and protecting personal assets for individuals caught in high-stakes family disputes. I was no longer a timid, hidden bookkeeper working in the shadows. I was a licensed professional, fierce, and completely self-reliant. One crisp autumn morning, my father and I packed our final suitcases into a sleek new truck. We took one last look at the sprawling green lawn, the quiet oak trees, and the robust antique rose bushes my mother had planted so many years ago. We locked the heavy front door for the very final time, leaving the heavy ghosts of the past behind us. We drove away under the wide, beautiful Texas sky, heading toward a brand new horizon where fear had no place to live. The warm, amber light of the golden hour bathed the high-rise penthouse in a soft, radiant glow. Located high above the sun-drenched coastline of Miami, Florida, the apartment was an oasis of quiet luxury and absolute freedom. Floor-to-ceiling glass panels framed an uninterrupted panoramic view of the vast Atlantic Ocean. The rhythmic sound of gentle waves rolling onto the white sand below drifted upward, carrying a refreshing, salty ocean breeze. White linen curtains swayed softly, filling the airy room with the clean scent of the sea. I stood on the expansive glass balcony, wearing a tailored, ivory linen jumpsuit. The warm tropical wind pulled at my dark hair, now cut in a sleek, sophisticated bob. My skin glowed with a healthy, sun-kissed radiance. I held a heavy crystal glass filled with sparkling mineral water and fresh mint, the ice clinking softly against the glass. I looked out toward the endless horizon, where the deep blue water met the golden sky. Inside the spacious living room, the atmosphere was peaceful and quiet. My father, Harrison, sat comfortably near a sunlit window, working on a large watercolor painting of coastal flowers. At 70 years old, he looked younger and stronger than he had in decades. His mind remained sharp, his eyes bright with gentle joy. The heavy, lingering shadows of grief and betrayal that once weighed him down in Texas were completely gone, replaced by the tranquil rhythm of a dignified retirement. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my drink, feeling the cool, refreshing liquid wash down my throat. As I watched the golden sun dip toward the water, my mind drifted briefly to the past. 6 months had passed since the federal courtroom door closed on Marcus Vance and Chloe Bennett. Yet, standing under the warm Florida sun, I felt no lingering anger, no bitter resentment, and no haunting ache. Marcus and Chloe were no longer terrifying monsters in my story. They had become distant, faded ghosts, completely irrelevant to the life I had built. Their greed had trapped them behind thick concrete walls and iron bars, while their betrayal had inadvertently pushed me toward my own liberation. I had completely abandoned the role of the helpless victim. I no longer blamed the past, nor did I wait for anyone else to validate my worth or save my future. I had taken absolute, unyielding responsibility for my own happiness. My transformation was not just an emotional realization. It was anchored in tangible, daily reality. On my polished mahogany desk inside lay the official registration documents for Cole Financial and Advisory Services, my independent auditing firm. As a fully certified CPA, I spent my days analyzing complex corporate structures, auditing disputed marital estates, and helping vulnerable individuals secure their rightful financial independence. Furthermore, the Eleanor Cole Foundation was thriving. Just yesterday, my team approved 3 emergency legal grants to assist women trapped in abusive, financially restrictive domestic situations. Thinking of those women stepping into their own freedom brought a deep, resonant warmth to my chest. I had taken the exact weapon used against me, financial manipulation, and turned it into a shield for thousands of others. The sun touched the edge of the ocean, painting the sky in breathtaking shades of deep orange, violet, and molten gold. A profound, unbreakable sense of peace settled deep into my bones. I was healthy, wealthy, fiercely independent, and surrounded by genuine love. I had reclaimed my name, my legacy, and my absolute sovereignty. I raised my crystal glass toward the glowing horizon in a silent, solitary toast to the future. A serene, radiant smile touched my lips, a smile born not of spite, but of pure, unadulterated joy and quiet pride. I was no longer the invisible wife hiding in the shadows of an old kitchen. I was the architect of my own destiny, standing tall in the full, unclouded light of my golden hour. in marriage or in life, when someone attempts to make you feel like an invisible person, do not waste a single second trying to prove your existence to them. Step boldly out of their shadow, take control of your own narrative, and transform yourself into a brilliant, unshakable landscape that they will never again have the privilege to touch. All shadows must fade before the truth, and every pain is simply the start of a beautiful rebirth. Always remember, the right to write a new chapter of your life is forever in your hands. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment below so we know we're walking this journey together. Hope to see you on the next page.